Fast Barstubne, ja, Waganedne, Fast Romstedne, Rom Novsri. Yes, man, I was on up, yes, under the Snassin kemmerslet njalre vann. Snasnandre vann fast unget. Ringeknes backboy, surfskirt scatroids, was there not? Nou, die bonen, haar meisje de gulses van en schinnef net said, yes, no man of us. Surf we were this best go wash the rest of the sit like it. Her must be my off my roses. Hello.
You realize you're just copying the Swedish bookstore bit from Top Secret, right?
Here it's Simastic. Right here, Sarambo. Snasnanrom. He was Patchroms as a zacket. Her remember. Yes, and Alex then yet the Stadzik. Her long it must yes, and I know one in it. Yes, and the Fats at Rome too. Yes, and that Fats at the if you're in it. Wash and that you listen, it must yes, there was it.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I. Should I play the pictures or not? Why not? Your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi or cinema, depending on what you prefer, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your pharaoh of physical media, and, of course, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett, coming at you with Robservations, the show about something. Robservations, episode number 522. I am robcasting at you from the Robservatory. This should be quite an interesting show today, I think. I'll flat out tell you right away, it's going to be a little controversial. And my feelings about today's topic are conflicted. So I'll tell you right up front, I'm going to be sort of working through this with you together live on this show. It's very interesting. It's a complex subject matter, which we will get into. And I'm going to say that I don't necessarily know what my thoughts about it are. I think today is going to be I'll be sort of self-exploring. It'll be therapy as much as it will be something of interest to discuss and ponder. However, before we get to today's topic, I would like to address something else. For those of you who, and to address something else, allow me to switch cameras here. In order to address God damn these glasses. You know, one day I really am going to get my man Tom Ford. I'm going to figure out how to get money and buy some really expensive great glasses. You know, that's kind of the same time when I lose 50 pounds so I can only wear Tom Ford clothes. I only wear his cologne as it is now. Anyway, so for those of you who watched yesterday's show, I came down pretty hard on CBR.com's writer John Mendelsohn for writing a particularly brain-dead, ill-researched, and just ill-advised article in general about one of my heroes, Stanley Kubrick. And not one of them, maybe the man who I very much admire his work, and he's been an inspiration to me since I was a kid. Now, while I used a lot of foul language in yesterday's show, some of it was for theater, some of it was for show, and I definitely was going off on a rant, but by design. This was something I had thought about. I knew what I was going to do. Premeditated swearing. But my ire was genuine. And people liked it. But not everybody liked it. And so I received a letter from one of my own moderators, from one of my oldest friends on this planet, Mr. Greg Smith himself. Very kind man, very learned man, a man who has a good head on his shoulders. He sent me this letter, and I'm going to read it to you. Hi, Rob. The first part of yesterday's show, Robservations 521, made me pretty upset. In it, I saw the Chancellor of Cheerfulness model some of the worst behavior I've seen on this show. Before you even finished, I was finished listening and I switched off the stream, and this has never happened before. Rob, you often say that you welcome dissent and disagreement as long as it's done respectfully. Yesterday, I saw you do almost entirely the opposite. As you read the article by John Mendelsohn, another writer, filmmaker, and self-described lover of anything and everything pop culture, you paused, as you often do, to comment. Most of these comments were personal attacks. You copiously used the word fuck and its variants to a degree you would normally find abhorrent. I know I did. Worse than an episode of Picard. So much so, I turned off the show. After sleeping on it, I decided to rewatch the show because I was curious just how many times you swore. Fuck and close variants, 13 times. Fuck you, 5. Motherfucker, 2. Bullshit, 4. Shit, 2. Plus some less extreme terms like dumbass and crap. I'm not a prude, and I swear myself, so the language isn't the issue. It's the amount of it used in what could have been a good rebuttal. As a member of your all-volunteer moderator team, I can say that if you had made these comments in the chat, they would have been removed. If you had made these comments on the Post Geek Singularity Facebook page, they would have been reported to the administrators. In this way, you modeled very poor behavior for the chat, the community, and made the jobs of your moderators harder. Rather than a point-by-point rebuttal, you use bad language, personal attacks of a debate style you normally take issue with. So it was weird to watch and not a little hypocritical. My personal opinion is that once you have resorted to that amount of swearing and name-calling, you've lost the argument. Your main and repeated complaint about the article is a lack of examples. You thankfully counter these points with some examples of your own, so that's good. But almost every time you spoiled your rebuttal with more swearing and personal attacks. At one point, you even said you hoped the article dragged him to an early grave. Come on, man. Rather than being angry about it, wouldn't it have been great if you instead point by point explained with examples how his assertions were incorrect? That would have been great. By this, I mean without the name calling and swearing. This would have been the respectful, cogent discourse we've come to expect from your show. Instead, we got the opposite, and it was disappointing, Rob. Where in your rant was the all you have to do is listen part? This episode earned my first ever thumbs down because of this. Yes, yesterday I considered resigning as a moderator over this. I thought it was that bad. After watching and listening to the show again, I won't go that far, but I did consider it. Sincerely, and still your friend, Greg Smith. Greg is absolutely right in everything he said. And I violated my own community standards. And what he said, I made a mistake of dragging myself down to the level of how I felt the author, John Mendelsohn, was at. And I thought in a little bit of theater, I would show my righteous indignation by swearing and basically bringing the level of discourse down. That was a mistake. Now, I do not apologize to John Mendelsohn for being incensed by his article. However, I do apologize to John, and mostly I apologize to the rest of the community for not living up to my own standards. And also, as Greg pointed out, I could have provided a high road rebuttal on a point-by-point basis and really taken apart this article, as I should have. And that's kind of what I in my misguided attempt to provide humor through my rant, it was wrong of me to do, and I admit that, and I very much appreciate. That's why you have friends who can reach out to you. They can criticize you. They can cogently criticize you and tell you what you've done wrong, and it was wrong, and I should not have done that. And besides, if it meant so much to me, rather than being, I don't know, flippant and really devolving the conversation, I should have, in a very constructive way, like I would normally do, offer a point-by-point rebuttal to his article. Now, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that because I already tainted those waters. I already screwed up. I do extend the invitation to Mr. Mendelsohn to come on to this show. I promise I will be nothing but cordial, as I am to all of my guests and interview subjects, to explain why he wrote this drivel of an article about one of my heroes. I won't swear, I won't be angry, but I wanted to deal with the fact that I think Greg is correct, and I think that for anybody that watches this channel, if you ever want to take me to task for any reason, I invite those letters. Sorry, it's still smoky outside. I invite those letters, and if you want to take me to task, please do so. So anyway, Greg, thank you for writing that in. Thank you for also not quitting, because as Kirk once said to Matt Decker, we're stronger with you than without you. I certainly am. What if I didn't have you to write these letters back to me? Who would keep me honest? Anyway, thank you for that. Now to the topic at hand. So there's some very interesting stuff. There's a very interesting article which I'm going to get to in a minute. But first, I already put in the chat, the live chat, a link to a very brief interview with Chinese science fiction writer, and if I butcher his name, Cixin Liu, I think. Cixin Liu is how you pronounce his name. He wrote the novel The Wandering Earth that the Chinese film was based on, but he also won the Hugo Award for Best Novel for his science fiction novel The Three-Body Problem, which was written in 2008 but came out in the United States in 2015. Now, first of all, what is a three-body problem? Well, a three-body problem in physics and classical mechanics. The three-body problem is the problem of taking the initial positions and velocities or momenta of 3 point masses and solving for their subsequent motion according to Newton's law of motion and Newton's law of universal gravitation. The three-body problem is a special case of the n-body problem. Unlike two-body problems, no general closed-form solution exists, as the resulting dynamical system is chaotic for most initial conditions, and numerical methods are generally required. Historically, the first specific three-body problem to receive extended study was the one involving the moon, the earth, and the sun. In an extended modern sense, the three-body problem is any problem in classical mechanics or quantum mechanics that models the motion of three particles. So I won't explain to you why the three-body problem is called what it's called, because I would say that's something of a spoiler. So I'm not going to get into it. But as we all know, well, let me explain what I'll give you a brief synopsis of this book. So the three-body problem was called The War of the Worlds for the 21st Century by the Wall Street Journal. And it is the first chance for English-speaking readers to experience the Hugo Award-winning phenomenon from China's most beloved science fiction author, Liu Xixin, but Liu Xixin, because you put your family name first in China. So, set against the backdrop of China's Cultural Revolution, a secret military project sends signals into space to establish contact with aliens. An alien civilization on the brink of destruction captures the signal and plans to invade Earth. Meanwhile, on Earth, different camps start forming, planning to either welcome the superior beings and help them take over a world seen as corrupt, or to fight against the invasion. The result is a science fiction masterpiece of enormous scope and vision, and it is the first book of the Remembrances of Earth's Past trilogy: The Three-Body Problem, The Dark Forest, and Death's End. Now, for anyone who's read these books, they are incredibly dense. Hard science fiction at its finest. The Three-Body Problem is a physics problem that does in fact relate to the aliens, but I won't explain what that is. It's an incredible work. I mean, it really is an amazing bit of work. And it does deal with the oppression of the Chinese government, with intellectuals, scientists, dissidents. There's a lot of that in the book. Now, I really recommend all three books, the trilogies. It's pretty amazing, but it is very heady stuff. There are no space battles. Well, let's just say not in the first book. Anyway, but it's not your traditional alien invasion story, and it's very, very heady and very dense, hard sci-fi. Well, so there's your background. Successful book series. It's celebrated. Well, as was announced, Game of Thrones showrunners David Weiss, D.B. Weiss, and David Benioff they have a $300 million deal with Netflix. And the first project that was announced that they're actually making is an adaptation of The Three-Body Problem. I would assume it's going to be an adaptation of all three books. They're partnering up with Rian Johnson and Brad Pitt's Plan B Productions, and this should be A-list all the way. And in the wake of things like the Foundation trilogy, it's no longer a trilogy. I keep saying that because when I was a kid, I got the Foundation trilogy from the Sci-Fi Book Club, and it was the first three books, but then there's been subsequent books after that, and books that are not written by Asimov that took the Foundation story further. But in the wake of getting things like the Foundation series and Denis Villeneuve's new adaptation of Dune, getting this kind of heady literary sci-fi adapted to other mediums like movies and television, this to me is a godsend. This is exactly the kind of thing, as an imagination connoisseur, that really excites me. And for the first time, we're seeing people that are both at the studio level or at the network level and creators who are getting behind this material. 20 years ago, this would never have happened. People would not have gotten into that. Now everything has shifted and changed, and it is one of the great byproducts of the post-geek singularity world that we live in that we're now getting this material made. So it's very, very exciting. Very excited for this to get made. And also, while I did not think I thought The Wandering Earth, as much as I enjoyed watching it, was pretty interminable, in terms of it just the storytelling. But if you click on the link that I put on earlier in this chat, if you go up to the top of the chat, you can find the link. There's a short interview. It's like a minute and a half with the author of The Three-Body Problem. And he discusses what made these movies possible, what made The Wandering Earth possible, is Hollywood blockbusters. So what we're dealing with now is, of course, the globalization. I mean, there's some people that are, the globalization of the planet. Well, anybody who's been watching and reading science fiction knows our corporate world culture was sort of, I guess, an inevitability. And hopefully we'll survive it all. We won't end up in a corporate war situation like in Rollerball. But what we're going to have to come to grips with is dealing with economies and places that are different from us. So what happened this week that I thought was very, very interesting, well, I'm just going to jump into this, and I'm going to read this article. This article was published yesterday by Dominic Patton on Deadline. Deadline, as many people know, is one of my go-to places that I'm always telling people to go. Like, if you read rumors about certain things, Deadline is one of the places that I always go to find out if rumors about the entertainment business are legit. The trades, I mean, Hollywood Reporter and Variety, even though they're going to be under the same roof. And then, of course, Deadline. So this article was in Deadline yesterday. Now, this is fascinating stuff to me. Netflix politely but firmly rejects GOP senators' critique over Chinese sci-fi novels the Game of Thrones EPs are adapting. On Wednesday, 5 Republican senators fired off a letter to Netflix's Ted Sarandos over the streamer service's plan to have the executive producers of Game of Thrones adapt Chinese author Liu Jian's sci-fi trilogy, The Three-Body Problem. Tonight, Netflix VP of Global Public Policy fired back nicely but firmly. Accused of normalizing the Chinese government's brutal incarceration of more than 1 million Uyghur Muslims by making a series out of Liu's award-winning books, Dean Garfield politely reminded the legislators that Netflix does not operate a service in China. In a Q&A format cut to the chase, the executive made it very clear that just because the author of The Three-Body Problem supports his government's inhumane policy, the company, EPs David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, and others working on the adaptation do not. Netflix judges individual projects on their merits, Dean Garfield told Senators Marsha Blackburn, Republican Tennessee, Rick Scott, Republican Florida, Martha McSally, Republican Arizona, and Kevin Kramer, Republican of North Dakota, and Tom Tillis, Republican of North Dakota, on Friday. Mr. Liu is the author of the book The Three-Body Problem, not the creator of the show. But he is the creator of the IP, sir. Garfield added, "We do not agree with his comments, which are entirely unrelated to his book or this Netflix show." Winner of the prestigious Hugo Award in 2015, with the first book in the trilogy, The Three-Body Problem examines humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. Earlier this month, Netflix revealed that the Game of Thrones EPs are turning the book into a series as a part of their $300 million overall deal with the company. Along with Brad Pitt's Plan B, Last Jedi director Rian Johnson, and Rosamund Pike being connected to the project too, Alexander Wu, co-creator of AMC's The Terror Infamy, who signed an overall deal with Netflix in February, will write and EP the Three-Body Problem series with Benioff and Weiss. In their September 23rd correspondence to co-CEO Sarandos, the 5 GOP senators asked if senior executives at the streamer were aware of the statements made by Liu and quoted in the New Yorker last year before they made a deal to adapt his work. The magazine's Jiang Ying fan asked Liu in the 2019 piece about the internment camps in Xinjiang province in northern China. She detailed, he trotted out the familiar arguments of government-controlled media. Would you rather that they be hacking away at bodies at train stations and schools in terrorist attacks? If anything, the government is helping their economy and trying to lift them out of poverty. If you were to loosen up the country a bit, the consequences would be terrifying. Based on those comments and the tensions between the Trump administration and Beijing, the senators in their letter of Thursday pressed Netflix to seriously reconsider the implications of providing a platform to Mr. Liu in producing this project. We have significant concerns with Netflix's decision to do business with an individual who is parroting dangerous CCP propaganda, the senators asserted. In the face of such atrocities in Zular, there no longer exists corporate decisions of complacency, only complicity. Today's response makes it pretty clear that Netflix believes they are guilty of neither complacency nor complicity, which means this is nowhere near over in this year of election. Here the full letter. Here's the full letter to the senators. Here, dear Senators Blackburn, Scott, Kramer, Tillis, and McSally, thank you for your letter from September 23rd and your interest in the upcoming Netflix series adaptation based on the Three-Body Problem. First, we'd like to note that Netflix does not operate a service in China. We'd address your questions and concerns below. Question: does Netflix agree that the Chinese Communist Party's internment of 1.8 to 3 million Uyghurs in the internment or labor camps based on their ethnicity is unacceptable? The answer is absolutely. As the UN Declaration of Human Rights, which China has signed, states all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Question: in order to avoid any further glorification of the CCP's action against the Uyghurs or validation of the Chinese regime and agencies responsible for such acts, what steps will Netflix take to cast a critical eye on this project to include the company's broader relationship with Mr. Liu? Answer, Mr. Liu is the author of the books, not the creator of the series. Mr. Liu's comments, well, I'm sorry, but if he wrote the books, he is the creator of the series. You've just chosen to adapt it into another form, but okay. Which I think is when he says Mr. Liu is the author of the books, not the creator of the series, yeah, he is the creator of the series. Sure, he might not be the showrunners, but he created the IP. Anyway, Mr. Liu's comments are not reflective of the shows of Netflix or the show's creators, or the views of Netflix or the show's creators, nor are they a part of the themes of the show. Question, were Netflix senior executives aware of the statements made by Mr. Liu regarding the CCP's genocidal acts prior to entering into an agreement to adapt his work? If so, please outline the reasoning that led Netflix to move forward with this project. If not, please describe Netflix's standard practice of due diligence and the gaps therein that led to this oversight. Answer, as Mr. Liu is a Chinese citizen living in China, he is the author of the books, not the creator of this Netflix series. I think that's really lame, first of all, to say that. The creators are David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the creators of Game of Thrones, and Alexander Wu, executive producer and writer on the series True Blood. Final question. Does Netflix have a policy regarding entering into contracts with public-facing individuals who, either publicly or privately, promote principles inconsistent with Netflix's company culture and principles? If so, please outline this policy. If not, please explain why not. Answer, Netflix judges individual projects on their merits. Mr. Liu is the author of the book, The Three-Body Problem, not the creator of the show. This is repeated now for the third time. We do not agree with his comments, which are entirely unrelated to his book or this Netflix show. Sincerely, Dean Garfield, Vice President, Global Public Policy of Netflix. There's so much in here to unpack. First of all, and again, I have so many thoughts about this. I'm just going to start rambling. First of all, why are Republican senators who, over the course of the last 4 years of the Trump presidency, have literally put people in cages on our southern border? Now, I don't believe a lot of the things that we've read about what happened there, but there was a lot of... The kids died. People died in our custody, people that were looking for the American dream. They were fleeing their gang-infested countries where they were in danger for their lives, and in some cases walked thousands of miles to come participate in the American dream. Now, as I've said before, if you're a refugee of some kind and you've walked 2,000 miles to come to the United States, I think that's actually somebody, that kind of wherewithal shows that kind of commitment. I would think that's somebody that would add to the tapestry, to the melting pot of America. I would think that is something to be lauded, something to be applauded, and something that we should embrace. So it seems strange to me that GOP senators are writing to Netflix to tell them who they should and shouldn't be in business with because of comments that they made in a New York Times profile about their work. So that's one thing. The second thing is the three-body problem absolutely deals with the kind of treatment people suffer at the hands of the totalitarian government of China. The Cultural Revolution is a big part of that first book. And as a matter of fact, the book is both critical, highly critical, and does examine Chinese culture. Now, what I find very interesting is that are we now expected, if you're a novelist and you're a public figure, sure, you can make whatever statements you want. Are you now expected, especially if you're a Chinese citizen living in China, a Chinese writer, who, by the way, if you're living in China as a Chinese writer, it's not like you can decide to change Chinese government policy overnight by being outspoken. We know that China, being a communist dictatorship, really, yes, they've embraced capitalism, but we know that if you say things and they don't like what you say, you'll be thrown in jail, you'll disappeared, or worse. So the idea that we're supposed to hold a Chinese to task for parroting the government policy of things that we find abhorrent, and I do. I find the treatment of the Uyghurs terrible. But is the writer of the Three Body Problem supposed to be at the forefront of dissent while he's living in China? I mean, how many supporters in this country supported the internment and the caging of kids and being stripped from their parents in this country over the last 3 years? Who are we to make these kinds of how? And also, why are our senators calling up Netflix and saying they shouldn't make a TV series based on a series of books because of political realities in China? I mean, I understand, well, we have to pressure. Putting economic pressure is actually a great way of getting things done. But why are we involved in that? I mean, I think what's really interesting is one of the things that I always say on this show, one of the things I think is very exciting is China as a country has not embraced science fiction. And one of the things I made the point of is the Chinese government a couple months back on this show, I talked about the Chinese government wanting to start a committee on science fiction and how they think that science fiction will foster technology and science and all that without really, I think, understanding that science fiction as a genre of literature is also a genre of social upheaval and social dissent and revolution. I mean, after all, the movie is called Star Wars, and it's about a band of rebels fighting an evil empire. I don't think that China really understands, and if you read the Three Body Problem, all three of the books, there's a lot of very interesting stuff. But what I think is really interesting is reading grand, hard sci-fi in the greatest tradition, but coming from a different cultural perspective than ours. And I think it's a really interesting collision here of art and politics, and you're asking a network who's adapting a book, creating a TV series, to somehow now get involved in politics and take a political stance against human rights abuses in China, even though they've signed that charter. I think it's a very interesting, because the question is, I'm of many minds of this. On one hand, I'm like, I don't want to stifle the creation of art. And I think that for especially Western audiences, being exposed to this kind of Chinese science fiction could offer a lot of insight into Chinese culture, which would not be got any other way. And I think that's a very good thing. Now, on the other hand, you have a writer who is not exactly living in a part of the world where he's free to talk to the New York Times and say whatever he wants against his own government. Also, China has had many attacks, as we've heard, weird stabbing issues where people run amok and children have died and teachers have died. They have had a lot of attacks, just like, we've had certain attacks. You want to blame them on one ethnicity, but as we know, especially from this past summer and what goes on in this country every single day, we're not exactly the kind of people that are living our lives on the straight and narrow where all of our own population is so well cared for and everybody's equal under the law. And yes, we treat some of our largest minority groups, such as, Black Americans, with such care. When gun violence goes up in Chicago, we certainly go in there and solve that problem so young people aren't losing their lives every weekend to guns. So I find it really interesting that these Republican senators decided, of all the things they could have done, they decided to write to Netflix about their adaptation of a science fiction novel series written by a man who's still living in China and has to think, whenever he says something, he has to think about his family, his ability to continue writing. Because if you read the Three Body Problem, it is critical of China. And it seems to me that, again, if you're going to do these things, if you're going to take your time as senators and you want to solve problems while there are still people in cages on our southern border, to write to Netflix and basically tell on the author of the book. I mean, it's interesting. Did you look back in 2019 with this? I mean, imagine the thought process that went through the senators. Like, let's look for some way to, what can we do? Let's go after Netflix. Let's go after the producers of Game of Thrones. Now, Weiss and Benioff themselves, a lot of people would say, Bob, Robert, Roberto, Rachmel, are you really going to defend Weiss and Benioff here? Listen, I loved Game of Thrones up until the very last 3 episodes of the show. The last 3 episodes, 4, 5, and 6 of season 8. I've never seen, I thought Lost, the last season of Lost, was an incredible betrayal of the audience. But I think that the last 3 episodes of Game of Thrones were so bad that they tainted all the previous episodes. Which is, I think Game of Thrones is some of the greatest, if not the greatest, certainly fantasy series that's ever been on television. But it was entirely really ruined by the last 3 episodes because the ending was the most pedestrian, lackluster, slipshod BS I've seen in a long time. And I don't understand why that is. However, you cannot deny that Weiss and Benioff brought us the first 7 seasons and 3 episodes of the 8th season. And some people could say, okay, they didn't get George R. R. Martin's final book, so they didn't have an ending. I get that. But they certainly did a fine job making sure that that book series was adapted in grand fashion. And the 3-Body Problem's only 3 books, so there you go. And if you read the books, the ambition that Netflix and Plan B and Rosamund Pike and Weiss and Benioff are showing by trying to adapt these books is enormous. And I think as far as Netflix goes, Netflix is not supposed to get involved in human rights issues. I mean, maybe they are. They don't even, as I said, Netflix isn't even in China. So, again, I am very conflicted because if they don't get involved, if you can't hit people economically, how are we going to have change? How are we going to make things better? I don't know. It's a very difficult, I think, situation. But I also think that our Republican senators should not be writing letters to Netflix now about not adapting a Hugo Award-winning book series from China. I think being able to do that, the kind of interest it might spur in people's minds about finding more out about China, about maybe getting involved in this. I think the byproducts of this show getting made, if it's done well, could go a long way toward getting people, especially people in the West, to understand what's going on. And it's a very interesting issue. And again, I don't... My first impulse, to be honest, is I can't wait to see this TV series. To see something that is... Look, do I think the potential to fuck it up is tremendous? I do. Because this is a very heady show, a heady series where a lot of the grand concepts, and there are grand concepts, are very theoretical, almost bordering on religious or magical or things like that. And I just want to see how they're going to do it. So I, as a fan, really want to see this series get made. But on the other hand, I do understand, like, but this author, while they do mention in this article, he's parroting out the party line. He kind of has to. You know, it's not like he's free to say whatever he wants. And the fact that the 3-Body Problem was even published at all, I mean, I'm sure if they ever had some state censorship organization read it, the reader got like 50 pages in and thought, all right, let this go through. There's nothing in here that I object to. Even though there is. I mean, there's people getting, beat to death during the Cultural Revolution in the book. So that's not really a spoiler alert, but it does inform some of the characters. And I just read this and I just wonder, like, what is it we expect to happen as we start coming into, conflict with other nations? I think if there's one place where we can start bridging gaps, it's through art. It's through the arts, and being able to share, because it's the one place, movies especially, movies and TV shows are the one place that immediately foster goodwill. And I think, talk about building bridges between cultures. I think China, in terms of shows, have saved. Well, they've maybe fallen behind a little bit. I think a grand science fiction show that's on Netflix that has, I mean, the reach of these books is enormous. They're so ambitious and so interesting. And when you think that, oh, it's an alien invasion story, not the way you think. It is grand, hard science fiction in the very best traditions. So my impulse is to say, yeah, let's get this made. I think it would do the world a lot more good to see this get made than to not see it get made. I don't know why senators are saying to Netflix, don't make this show, because the author of the books it said some things to cover his own ass to make sure that he can still talk to the New York Times. I mean, they have to understand that this author's living in China under the Chinese system. He can't be, I don't know, to take on another Netflix movie, he can't be Abby Hoffman. He's not going to do that. And so what do? How do you position it? And I find it interesting that our Republican senators were writing Netflix, telling him not to make a TV show based on a cool science fiction novel because of a position that the writer of the book parroted in the New York Times a year ago, because he still has to go back to China and doesn't want to find himself in some, I don't know what the equivalent is, the word gulag. What's the Chinese prison, I guess. So it's very interesting. But I also think it's kind of lame for Netflix to then turn around and go, well, we're not in China. And the creator of the book is not the creator of the series. The creator of the series are Weiss and Benioff. I mean, that was lame too. I mean, come on, Netflix. Why not, instead of saying, like we didn't option you paid the author probably a pretty big chunk of change, and he's probably going to consult on the project as well. And for you to come around and say, oh, that was lame. That was lame. I think in a way, just say, look, we find this property to be incredibly compelling, incredibly interesting, and we think the world will be a better place if we put our substantial resources behind it to actually make it. So people around the world might get more insight through science fiction into a culture that not a lot of people understand, especially in the West. So, but it was lame of Netflix to say that 3 times. Well, we're not in Canada, and he's not the creator. The dude wrote the 3 books. He is the creator of the show. He might not be making the television show adaptation of it, but he created the series. You can't sit there and go, no, he's not the TV. It was so lame. You read this and you're like, come on, guys, stand up for your convictions. Why not say, or even write back, go, it's really hard for us to take you seriously while there are kids in cages on our southern border. Who are you to tell us about making television where we could be bridging cultural gaps while we have people incarcerated in this country? Or better yet, why not talk about all the black Americans that are still incarcerated in much, much larger percentages than anybody else in this country? Why not talk about the for-profit prison system? How fair is that? I mean, where do you end? You want to start that? You want to start that argument? Netflix should just make a litany before they even talk about the books or Mr. Liu. They should talk about where we're at. Who are you to cast aspersions on us? Come on, man. I mean, but it speaks to, I think, a larger issue to me, which is, I'll tell you, great movies and great television are a way of making everyone's lives better. Because when you have the whole world, I mean, it's like, people talk about, oh, the MCU or whatever, bringing entertainment to people. Like I've always said, people of all walks of life, all shapes, sizes, colors, creeds, when they come together and they sit in a darkened movie theater for 2 hours, they will hopefully shut the fuck up, but they will also watch what is presented to them. And I don't think there's any finer way of sharing our cultures with one another. Well, other than maybe breaking bread over a meal, because everybody likes a good meal too. And you can talk to people during a meal, but you can reach more people in a crowded movie theater. Maybe not these days, but someday again we will be able to do it. So you have to ask yourself, what's more important? And why are our senators even policing what Netflix is doing? Netflix is a network that is bringing programming from all over the world on an unprecedented scale. And Netflix, if nothing else, I mean, whether you like streaming services or not, one of the things you've got to give it up for in terms of Netflix is they are bringing worldwide programming to audiences that would never have access to it otherwise. That's something that our government should get behind rather than criticize, especially when there's a lot of problems. And until all of our social problems are completely solved and everything in this country, we don't have people en masse incarcerated, mostly from one specific ethnic group. Till we've done that, who are we? Who are we to say these kinds of things? I just think it's a little odd. Anyway, again, I'm conflicted. I think it's many different things are going on here. But all I can tell you is that if you want to read, if you like your sci-fi heady, and you're a fan of science, and you're a fan of crazy concepts and theoretical concepts, The Three-Body Problem, it's pretty amazing. And I would recommend you can get you can get them like I got Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials series when they come in a slipcase version with all 3 books. Get it, read it if you like heady sci-fi. It's not space battles, it's not like that. But if you like concepts and things that'll expand your mind, the Three-Body Problem and its following books are pretty damn good. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say. What do you guys think? Do you have any opinions? I know this is probably out of left field and people are like, oh, I didn't know you were talking about that. But yeah, it's really interesting and the situation is fascinating. I just find it strange. I mean, one of the things that I want, whether it's Republican or Democrat, what I want in my political leaders is I want to see people that I think are abreast of all of the issues that are pressing for our country, the issues that are affecting all of us. And this is not one of those issues. And I absolutely kind of found it somewhat disappointing, not because all the Republicans, the senators were Republicans that were writing in. I'm like, don't we have pressing domestic issues? I mean, maybe they think that the Three-Body Problem is going to brainwash Americans about, I assure you it's not. And the thing that I mostly wonder about, the thing that I'm fascinated by, is are they going to adapt this story? Because the story is set in China. The main characters are Chinese. So by adapting the Three-Body Problem, are they going to set it in China? Could you even make these movies in China? Or are we going to have them set in the United States? I mean, you could do it, but the People's Revolution, and it is very much steeped in Chinese culture. So I'm curious to see what they do. And if, in fact, maybe that's what Netflix was alluding to, is that, yeah, the author was Chinese or is Chinese, but we're going to adapt these things out here in the West, and it's going to be very, very different, or at least look or feel different. The story will probably be the same. But interesting stuff. And for me, I just don't know. I mean, very fascinating. Now, before I get to letters and your chats, I actually have a commercial break, something that we need to discuss, or actually that I'll make you aware of. So here we go. You've borne witness to a secret exchange. Now get ready for an unboxing of unseen magnitude. Join Patrick Keller, Dieter Bastian, and featuring Mia Keller in The Secret Exchange 2, Broken Promises, this weekend as a world premiere on the Burnett Network. Wow, who would have thought? As all of you know, our favorite Dieter Bastian and Patrick Keller and Mia Keller, his daughter, they already gave us The Secret Exchange, which debuted on this channel next weekend. It says this weekend, but it's actually next weekend. We will be seeing, we will be in full swing of our first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. And I know that there's at least 3 films that are coming in. And I am going to be playing these films as they come in on the channel. And on December 15th, we will announce the semifinalists. And on Christmas Day, we will be playing all of the films. And on Boxing Day, we will be doing a live show where we will be announcing the winners, which is going to be a lot of fun. So The Secret Exchange, which is, I have to say that I think, it was Dieter and Patrick's film, The Secret Exchange, that sort of inspired the film festival. Because I don't know, the fact that they made it, that they just went out and made it, I was like, well, let's do that. So it'll be interesting to see The Secret Exchange 2. Definitely will be interested. It'll be entered into the film festival. So we shall see how it goes. But they asked me to do a little voiceover. It's funny, I gave many different choices, many different ways to go. And so there you go. By the way, that trailer will be published on the Burnett Work YouTube page when I'm off the show today. So there you go. This first letter, comes from Doc Vader. Hey, Rob, thanks again for reading my last letter. Anyhow, let me add more to Filipino fantasy movies. Just like science fiction, there's a lot of incorporation of fantasy elements in comedy, horror, and action movies. The first medieval fantasy classic we have was from poet Francisco Baladas. He wrote his epic narrative while imprisoned. Its full title translated to English was The History of Florante and Laura in the Kingdom of Albania. Ultimately, it's a story of love between the two main characters, with both having his or her own adventures and come across a common adversary in Count Adolfo, who wants to rule the kingdom. Another epic poem is Ibong Ardana. I got it right. He gave it to me phonetically, so that's good. Written during the 16th century, and its full title in English was Corrido and Life Lived by the Three Princes, Children of King Fernando and Queen Valeriana in the Kingdom of Barbary. There's a title. The story mainly was about the three princes vying for their father's throne. They are all tested when they're sent on a quest to capture the magical bird Ardana, which is said to have songs that can heal their depressed and sickly father. Both stories have been adapted into movies and TV series throughout the years. Two of its more popular reiterations are comedies led by industry legends Dolphy and Rene Requestas, the same actor who played Joker in Alias Batman and Robin. Filipino comics were the best source material for fantasy, as previously mentioned. Almost all of our superheroes jump out from this medium, with Darna being the most popular. In contrast, we have Pedro Pinduco. He is a common man that fights off the supernatural without having any powers, but although protected by a magical amulet called a Mutaya. Debuted 1950, the character was rebooted in the 90s as a comedy film, but is now starring as his coward. Debuted in the 1950s, the character was rebooted in the 90s as a comedy film, but now starring his coward descendant, continuing with his own misadventures. We also had our own crime-buster version of Phantom and Alias, Phantom and maybe some more from American comic strips of that era. Many took inspirations on fairy tales. We had our own version of Cinderella with Bullet Small Cinderella and Ong Hawaga ni Maria Cinderella, The Mystery of Cinderella. We also had the crossover Pinocchio and Little Snow White, Pinocchio and Little Snow White. Furthermore, we had versions of A Mermaid Story with Dizabel and Ong, Mahiwangang Kabibe, Decebel and the Mysterious Shell, a genie story with Ong Mahi Wangang, Lampara, the Magic Lamp, and finally a folk legendary tale in C. Malakas at Maganda, the Strong and the Beautiful, in which was a local take on Adam and Eve. Ooh, I'd like to see that. During the late 1980s, a comedy sitcom OK Ka Fairy Ko, You're Okay My Fairy, premiered on TV. It was about a regular guy, Enteng Kibasate, being married to a fairy, and shows a random slice of life situations where he often finds himself trouble and always was chided by his mother-in-law, who also happens to be the queen of fairyland. That sounds like Bewitched. The series has gone on to be adapted to 10 movies from 1991 to 2016. Lastly, we have Anak ng Bulkan, Children of the Volcano, set in a volcanic island where a young boy befriends a giant bird, Goliath. Released in 1959, it was remade in 1977 with Sergio Santiago at the helm. Generally, I think science fiction and fantasy movies suffer from a need for a higher budget, and I do think the cost of production design has curtailed producers in creating new narratives for a film to be viable. They have more luck through TV series like Mulawin, a fantasy based on Philippine bird species as birdmen, and Encantadia, a fantasy world of four kingdoms where peace hangs by a thread. Although these are fantasy series, all fall to the same formulaic cliches that the audience loves. That is it for me. Until next time, fly, you fools. Doc Vader. Man, I've learned more about Philippine fantasy cinema in the last couple of weeks than I have my entire life. I love it. Now I just hope I can see it all. I have to see it all. Matthew Zorich writes in. Matthew Zorich says, I'm enjoying your review of The Prisoner. Is The Prisoner not wanting to be called Number 6 or any number a sort of parody about James Bond being called 007? Also, there's a theory that 007 is the number who is assigned to the person in that job at the time, but not any one person. Number 6 insists he's not a number, but a free man. I don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, I think that fan theory about 007 has occurred because of the people that play 007 and that they're very different. I kind of like that, but that wasn't in Fleming's books. 007 was James Bond. He was a guy. In the Chimes of Big Ben, number 2 acknowledges that both sides will be looking into a mirror and run the whole world like the Village. Number 6 says if that's the case, then he wants to be the first man on the moon. At the end of Fallout number 1, number 6 blasts off in an Apollo-type rocket. It's true. Also in Fallout number 6 asks Leo McKern if he has ever met number 1. Leo McKern says face to face. Is his response a question or a statement like, are you joking? Don't you know who you are? Of course I met him. Well, my friend, this is not for me to say. This is for you to say, which is why the ambiguity of the last 2 episodes of The Prisoner have people talking 50 years later. The council members who represent the anarchist, who may be the same character who begs for forgiveness in a change of mind. From Cliff's Notes, Technocracy, a government run by technical experts with money replaced by work units of currency. I have thought the film A Scanner Darkly and The Prisoner had similar themes. There's definitely a lot of Philip K. Dick in The Prisoner. The Village is allowing number 6 to escape in order to improve security, like free diagnostics. Could it be the more he tries to escape and struggles, the more he's helping the Village? Very probably. Alternatively, number 6 is playing chess against himself. Very possibly. Maybe number 6 was a willing prisoner to see how difficult it was to escape. He had to make it all seem convincing to his superiors. Oh, I don't think so. In Free For All, he calls that mini-council a tailor's dummies. In Fallout, his original clothes are on a tailor's dummy. These are random ideas I've had for years. Best regards, Matt. Well, Matt, great letter. And I think, as we go on, for those of you who don't know, Az, who is known as Heel versus Babyface on social media, Az and I have been examining the Prisoner episodes, all 17 of them. We've been going on a journey. He's been sick the last couple weeks, so he didn't do this week. But it's definitely been fascinating to experience that with Az. I've had a great time, and we're going to keep going. And follow us, but watch the episodes first. Omar94 is here. Omar94 says, William Goldman, iconic screenwriter behind movies like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, All the President's Men, The Princess Bride, and Misery, once said, nobody knows anything, stating how nobody in the industry knows what's going on. That had me realizing how a number of the best and most iconic and influential movies got made by taking risks, as nobody knew if it would work. Walt Disney risked everything to make Snow White, from his company, his house, everything, as he believed an animated movie could be done, when everyone in Hollywood, including his own wife and brother, tried talking him out of it, believing nobody would sit through a full-length cartoon. Star Wars was a risk, but Alan Ladd Jr. took a chance on George Lucas to make it. Even after it was made, George Lucas himself believed it would fail. However, what happened was the most complete opposite, as it became one of the most, if not the most influential movie of all time. Nobody wanted to make E.T., so Steven Spielberg approached Sid Sheinberg, who decided to greenlight it. The movie went on to become, at the time, the highest-grossing movie of all time. It's still true how nobody knows what is going to work, but when it does work, it can work very, very well. Thanks, and live long and prosper, Omar94. Well, look, like I've always said, people do not get filthy rich in Hollywood by chasing trends. They get filthy rich in Hollywood. They get really successful by setting trends. And as I've said before, the problem with Hollywood, it's not that nobody knows anything, really, even though I think William Goldman is right about that. The problem is there's nobody who's willing to step up and stake their entire reputation on a project. You know, and when you talk about people like Zanuck and Brown, who made Jaws, or you talk about like Alan Ladd Jr., who made Star Wars, or the other day when I was talking about Bob Shaye. You know, Bob Shaye watched a 5-minute presentation. I mean, to reiterate, Bob Shaye made a 5-minute Peter Jackson made a 5-minute presentation to Bob Shaye after everyone else had turned him down to make the Lord of the Rings movies. They were going to make 2. Peter Jackson was doing Lord of the Rings with Miramax. They were going to make 2 films, then Miramax pulled out. But even Miramax expected to get paid $50 million. So already you had $50 million encumbering Lord of the Rings before they decided they could even make it. So somebody had to come up and pony up that money for it to get made. Bob Shaye saw 5 minutes of what Peter Jackson had done. The lights come up, and Bob Shaye's the first thing out of his mouth was, "Aren't there 3 Lord of the Rings movies?" The man literally bet not only all of New Line, but he bet his life's work, New Line Cinema. He threw the dice. He went all in a game of Texas Hold'em that no one's ever played. But man, he went all in. And by the way, not a sure thing. As anybody who watches, well, my editorial piece on the Two Towers extended features, that movie was a mess even when they were scoring it in London. The whole end of the movie where Samwise is sort of narrating the end of the film and you're intercutting between all the battles, there was no Ent attack on Isengard. That was all last minute shit. And it makes the movie. And now I'm not saying the rest of the movie was garbage, but the movie it was kind of a mess. So it was not a sure thing, even after Fellowship made all the money that it made. It was, all 3 of those movies were tough, and they were working on them up until the very, very last minute. But look at those rewards. I mean, basically it's $1 billion and home video ancillary markets. Lord of the Rings was a huge success. Huge success. I mentioned the same thing about producer Roy Lee. You know, Roy Lee, who, lest we not forget, this week, well, maybe you did because I didn't really report on it, signed his company Vertigo Entertainment, signed a first look deal with Lionsgate. He has a TV deal somewhere else. I mean, that guy at one point in the early aughts decided, hey, the J-horror boom is huge. I'm going to go figure out how to get the rights to Ju-On, The Grudge, and The Ring. And then he got the rights to Infernal Affairs, which became The Departed, directed by Martin Scorsese, and, oh hey, winning an Academy Award for Best Picture. Why did he do that? You know, he put up his own money put his money where his mouth was, got the rights, and achieved success. Gore Verbinski's The Ring is still one of my favorite horror films of the last 20 years. As crazy and outlandish and nonsensical as those movies really are, you buy into it. Peak verisimilitude can make you believe. And it does. It also has some of the greatest, that first body in the closet gets me every time. But why did that happen? The thing is, you know, what William Goldman, people do know things in Hollywood. Like, they do. But the problem is there's so much risk involved that nobody can be responsible for making a $200 million flop, although people have been. I mean, but you can't say. Although I do think that one of the problems with Hollywood is so often the people in power don't trust the filmmakers because they need too much assurances to go forward because there's so much risk involved. We don't have anybody, we don't have the producers that are in positions of power that can make those gutsy moves like Alan Ladd and be like, I'll greenlight that shit. Yeah, let's go make Star Wars. Let's do it. You know, and they didn't know. But George Lucas might not have known, but, you know, the people he got great people around him. You know, James Cameron knows. He hasn't failed. Titanic. I mean, look at the risk that guy took making Titanic and making Avatar. He won both times, but you got to have a creator like a James Cameron. So, you know, that's what you got to do. Now, this one, let's see. I got another poster entry, and let me download it. and I'll put it up. And this letter just comes from Noel Newman, or as he likes to call himself, Ninja Noel Newman. Ninja Noel Newman came up with a poster design, and I'm going to show it to you right now. This is from Ninja Noel Newman in Minneapolis. Look at this. Look at this poster. Wow, that's some crazy shit right there. Now, I hope that is an image of something that you took and not a piece of clip art or something. I hope you have the rights to that picture, Noel. I mean, being a ninja, you never know. Just thought I'd ask. Just thought I'd throw it out there. So for those of you who, we still have the poster contest going until the 30th, here's an entry that people really like, a very Monty Python-esque, Terry Gilliam-esque entry from Jason Spriggs that I quite like. A lot of people really love this. I think this is crazy. He actually asked me to take a photograph for this poster, which I did. And I know it looks similar to other pictures, but I did take a photo for him. He's actually combined a couple of photos here of me. But, of course, I can't do the cross-eyed thing. But, hey, you can still... The poster contest will end on September 30th at midnight Pacific time. And then hopefully on October 1st, we will have a page or many pages on the website where you can see all of the entries and start voting. And hopefully we will have a winner by October 5th. So we need it to promote the festival. So that's pretty cool. So Noel, thanks for sending this in. Very, very awesome of you. Very cool. So thank you for that. This one comes from Mike F. Mike says, "Hi, Rob and the Post Geek Singularity. I just want to say that I agree with you on your sentiments regarding the Stanley Kubrick article. My problem with the article is that it felt like he didn't do any research to supply or justify the statements that he made here. It's like he was just writing what's in his mind and then clicked the publish button. I wish the article wasn't published, and I can't believe it was allowed to be published in the first place. There's nothing wrong about criticism, but I wish there were facts and research supplied to justify the statement that he would make." Actually, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to switch myself back here so you can look at what's coming out of my head. There's nothing wrong about criticism, but I wish there were facts and research supplied to justify the statements that he would make in the article. Reasonable. I admire Kubrick a lot. He's not necessarily one of my top 5 directors. What? Of all time, but I like his films a lot, and I appreciate him as a master filmmaker. And whether we like it or not, he is universally praised as one of the best filmmakers of all time. Anyway, that is my sentiment regarding this issue. I wish next time they will be more responsible when publishing an article like that. Thank you, stay safe, and live long and prosper. Well, Mike F., I agree with you there, sir. I mean, I could have used less profanity, and as Greg Smith pointed out, I could have mounted a very impassioned defense, which is probably what I should have done, rather than just get mad. Maybe I Karen'd it up yesterday too much, which I probably shouldn't have done. And I certainly was not living up to what normally goes on this channel. So for that, I apologize. Ian Samuels sends in some more fan fiction. Rob and fellow Robservationists, another idea and a possible future project. The project I'm working on at the moment is Computer Blue, a cyberpunk tale in a dark post-apocalyptic future, following a character who is a special agent of the computer working directly for the all-powerful, all-knowing, omnipotent computer, and it looks into corruption with law enforcement all around the earth. But I also have another idea. Uh-oh, here it comes. An old-style Imperial shuttle exits hyperspace over a red desert planet. It descends through the atmosphere. It comes to land near huge statues of ancient Sith. The planet is obviously that of Korriban, once homeworld of the Sith. The ramp lowers from the shuttle and a robed figure steps down onto the red dust-covered ground. The figure is a heavily pregnant female. She walks between the entrances to the long plundered tombs of the likes of Marka Ragnos and Ajutapal. She drops to her knees, holding her stomach. She takes a few moments panting before managing to get back to her feet and continues. She walks up the slight rise before following the path around to her left. She briefly passes a cave entrance, which she feels an intense cold breeze emanates from. She finds herself to the entrance to the once Sith Academy. Once in the center chamber, she faces the entrance to the only surviving door, the entrance to the Sith library. She kneels and begins to pray. I have come to place this to offer my twin girls to you to retake the power that is rightfully the Sith's. She collapses as her body begins to be racked with labor, and she begins to give birth. Another older female figure approaches. The figure is Marluka from the planet Aphrodite. The sun's rays call all inhabitants of the planet to be born blind, but all are force sensitive and learn to see through the force. Marluka always wears a veil of other means to cover their unseeing eyes. The veiled figure comforts the mother and assists in the birth of the twins. Sensing something unique about the twins after their birth, the Marluka places a hand so that her index finger touches the one infant on the forehead, and the ring finger on the same hand touches the forehead of the second child. Her other hand she places on the forehead of the mother. Using herself as a conduit, she draws the remaining life energy from the mother and passes it on to the twins. So it's the start of a new Star Wars adventure. What do you think? I think it's intriguing. I don't know where it's going to go, but that is intriguing. We'll see. Sith twins. I like that. Bring it on, son. I will definitely watch that. So why not? This comes from Kenny Crayley. Dear Robert, hey Robert, members of the Post Geek Singularity. I'm back again with another letter, and for today's letter I wanted to talk about, so I was watching Mando Season 1 and all of the Star Wars films recently, and today I wanted to talk about the visual style of Star Wars and how it's changed over the course of various media. So here goes. For the prequel trilogy era and the Clone Wars era, the visual style had much more Art Deco, when things were clean. And then we get into the original trilogy era and into Rebels, it was more of a used universe type of style, where things were dirty and more gritty. Then we get to the Mandalorian in the sequel trilogy era, and it's back to more of a used universe type style, and a hint of that Art Deco design. But did things really change all that much in the sequel trilogy era in terms of visual style? So what are your thoughts on this, Robert? Well, look at how quickly cars, if you look at cars from the 50s and cars from the 80s, styles change, definitely. Remember during the Empire era, a lot of the stuff fell into disrepair and disuse, and things were cannibalized. I think the equivalent of what happened in Cuba. When Cuba fell, communism took over. The Americans were driven out, and you had people leaving. Like, of course, we saw everything that happened in The Godfather is absolutely true. So in The Godfather Part 2, when Havana fell during the New Year's Eve celebrations, that happened, right? And and we saw that Hyman Roth was run out of Cuba, and then as a result of that, the Cubans had to keep their cars. Basically, the Cubans were like rebels, keeping their cars going with technology because they couldn't get new cars in or anything like that. So, the rebels and what happened is the unless you're part of the empire, manufacturing probably went down, and so it was a pain in the ass. But yeah, it didn't. Look, the Star Wars sequel trilogy doesn't make much sense if you start from the end of Return of the Jedi and then you wind up, the Empire's destroyed, but nope, we have the First Order. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's again, I think it's a highly uncreative way to go. I was never a fan. But yeah, I think that the prequels are very different from Star Wars and the sequel trilogy, but I think that's probably because during the prequels, the Empire hadn't existed yet, and the Republic was at the height of its power. So, indeed, sir. Absolutely. This is a letter from Jason Webster. Hello, Robert. Hope yourself and the members of the Post Geek Singularity are having a good week. This letter is a follow-up to my last letter regarding Asian cinema. However, this time I've wondered about your observations of Asian television and how the industry has grown within the past 2 or 3 decades in Japan, South Korea, and China. There have been a lot of wonderful television series that have come out that have been broadcast through commercial television, cable, and streaming services over the period. Numerous series have shown a great level of style and sophisticated storytelling. Regarding television, South Korea really led the way in the first decade of the new millennium in producing high-quality historical dramas and period romance series. Empress Key from 2013 is my all-time favorite TV drama series and the standout for epic historical dramas due to its rich cinematography, production design, gorgeous costumes, and compelling performance by Hai Ji-won as Key. She commands every scene in which she appears. I consider it the greatest television historical drama ever produced. Wow, I'll have to watch that. However, Harang Genie, Queen Sodok, and the King's Daughter Sobe Haing and Haichi are other good examples. Also, there have been good period fantasy shows such as Moon Embracing the Sun and Shine or Go Crazy. For many years, Japan has become well known for its taiga dramas, and there have been some good series within the last 2 decades, including Yoshitsune, Atsushumi, Romadan, Yano Sakura, Sundaramu Maru, Notoria the Lady Warlord, and Segadon. Notora the Lady Warlord and Yano Sakura are my favorite Japanese taiga dramas. Both feature standout performances by female leads in Ko Shibuyaski for the former and Haruka Ayase for the latter. The one constant among all the shows mentioned has been solid production design, including beautiful and historically accurate costumes. China has produced historical dramas of considerable note, such as Empress of China, Mulan in 2013, Nirvana in Fire, The King's Woman, and Ming Dynasty in 2019. The Empress of China is my favorite Chinese historical drama. Fan Bingbing really carries the series in the lead role, and she is my favorite Chinese actress. China has forged a reputation for making good period fantasy shows such as Eternal Love, Ashes of Love, Legend of Whitesnake, and Love and Redemption from 2020. South Korea has produced some really charming romantic comedies in Boys Over Flowers, The Secret Garden, Birth of a Beauty, She Was Pretty, Beautiful Gong Shim, Kill Me, Heal Me, Radio Romance, and Crash Landing on You. I like that title, Crash Landing on You. All of which feature effective storytelling and great acting. Secret Garden, Beautiful Gong Shim, and She Was Pretty are my favorite K-dramas within this particular genre. I have obtained a level of engagement and enjoyment from these shows that is higher than any series to come out of Hollywood over the last 2 decades. Japan has also produced good romantic comedies such as Hana no Dango, Akimen Desure, Switch Girl, Clinic on the Sea, Good Morning Call, Happy Mari, Happy Marriage, and Todome no Kiss. China has released some fine romantic comedies in Love 020, A Love So Beautiful, and Sweet Dreams. Japan has produced fine romance dramas such as Tokyo Wanky, Destiny of Love, Rich Man, Poor Woman, and A Sharply Graceful Girl. China has produced some fine romance dramas in The Interpreter, Memories of Love, Here to Heart, and Granting You a Dreamlike Life, and Nice to Meet You. South Korea has produced charming romance dramas in Chicago Typewriter, Search WWW, and Chocolate. In terms of drama, South Korea has produced some great dramas in Nice Guys, Secret, The Heirs, Good Doctor, Endless Love, Money Flower, Whisper, Chief of Staff, and Sky Castle, as well as detective series such as Mrs. Cop and Stranger. Is that like Macmillan and Wife? Japan also produced quality drama series Trick, Orange Days, The Queen's Classroom, Change, 7 Female Lawyers 2, Code Blue, Dr. X series, 35 Sai no Kukase, Erased, and Atelier. Japan has also produced many good police dramas and thrillers such as Boss, Kaiuzuku 2, Spec, Galileo, Mau, Mr. Brain, Ouroboros, and Million Yen Woman. These series feature strong acting and are compelling to watch. Secret is my favorite. Wait, hang on. Yeah, Secret is my favorite K-drama within the drama genre. My favorite Japanese drama series are 7 Female Lawyers, 2, 35 Sai no Kukusui, and Dr. S, as Yumiko Shaku and Ryoko Konokura are 2 of my favorite Japanese actresses, along with Haruka Ayase. Japan has also produced quality drama and comedy drama series that are very enjoyable and possess hallmarks needed to be successful. Goku-sen, Nodame Cantabile, Hanazakari. I should just publish this on the website. There's all these. Number 1, Mob Psycho, Gokusen, and Miyazaki Number 1 are my favorite Japanese comedy drama shows. South Korea has released some good comedy dramas in Because This Is My First Life, Fight My Way, and My ID is Gangnam Beauty. South Korea has produced numerous good fantasy shows such as 49 Days, Queen in Huntsman, Faith, Master's Son, Oh My Ghost, W2 Worlds, Moon Lovers, Scarlet Heart Reo, Goblin, Strong Girl Bonsoon, Legend of the Blue Sea, and My Only Love Song. These shows feature good storytelling and solid acting across the board and are very entertaining. Strong Girl Bong Soon and My Only Love Song are my favorites. The female lead of Strong Girl Bong Soon, Bo Young Park, is endearing and engaging as Bang Min-ah is in Beautiful Gong Shim. China has produced some amazing fantasy series in Go Princess Go, My Amazing Boyfriend, Unexpected, and The Love Knot, His Excellency's First Love. South Korea has produced many good horror or supernatural themed series such as Blood, Scholar Who Walks at Night, Black, Kingdom, and Hotel de Luna. Pardon the pun, but I'm a sucker for a good vampire show such as Scholar Who Walks at Night. Japan has seen the release of the series such as Sky High, One Missed Call, Neon Ultra Q Special Screening 3. I'd love to see that. Remind and Ju-on Origins, which premiered on Netflix in July this last year. That could be the show you never keep. That goes to show you never can keep a malevolent Japanese spirit down for too long. And hey, that has sparked a thought. I wonder what shows Kyoko and Sadako would watch on Netflix. I love numerous Japanese and South Korean television series, as is evidence that the cast and crew of these shows exhibit great passion, enthusiasm, and dedication to producing the quality entertainment that engages the audience. It is refreshing to see numerous shows where producers are not predominantly interested in pandering to the latest trend or gimmick or singularly focused on catering to any specific demographic. I'm looking at you, Star Trek Discovery and Doctor Who. That's not to say there aren't any within Japanese and South Korean television that don't do that, nor are these shows overly preachy on any one subject or issue that concerns contemporary society. It doesn't feel like checking boxes to appear relevant. So as a consequence, audiences don't feel as though they're being condescended to. Though you will find the odd series here and there that feels like they are overdoing product placement, The King, Eternal Monarch, the most obvious example of this. Still, it doesn't take away from enjoying such shows as a whole. I would love to hear your opinion on Asian television regarding the standard of recent productions, and do you believe they can maintain or see further increases in current levels of popularity and quality within television production in the region? Well, Jason, first of all, I appreciate your impassioned love of all Asian cinema and television. Very refreshing to hear. No, look, there's so much to catch up on. Obviously, there's a new season of The Kingdom that I want to watch, the Korean period zombie show. I've always loved Asian television, and I've always loved Asian movies. So, and I wish I could watch more of it. I mean, you just gave me over 100 titles. We should, you should probably give us a list, like organize them the way you did, but say, your top Korean shows, fantasy, science fiction, thriller, or whatever. Send us that list broken down so it's easy to see, and we should post that on the website. But I like seeing the cross-cultural shows, and Netflix they're killing it. And you could fall down a rabbit hole, and you could really there's a lot of great stuff out there. James Esparza sent me something. I've always been a gigantic fan of Godzilla, and I knew you would love to see this awesome mashup of music and CGI. Now, I'll tell you something. James, let me tell you, this is an awesome mashup. I can't play it on the channel, but I'm going to put it in the live chat, and you should all check it out because it's pretty dope. Check it out. There you go. All right, well, let's see what you guys are saying over there. Let's see what's going on. Bum, 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 bum. All right, here we go. Madsif, is it Yada or just Yada? Matsif Yada asks, how was William Shatner on the set of Free Enterprise? Would he take direction well? Yes. William Shatner was great on the set of Free Enterprise. Like I've said before, Shatner does not suffer fools gladly. He wants to know you know what you're doing. And I think with Shatner, like, we've all heard the sabotage, that clip when he was recording voiceover for a video game that Howard Stern used to play a lot. Here's the thing with William Shatner. William Shatner is making choices. He knows how he's going to play his characters. Now, one of the things about Free Enterprise that I knew wouldn't work, I watched a lot of Shatner's previous humorous appearances on things. Obviously, I think the best is the Saturday Night Live appearance because he's not broad during that. He doesn't go big. He likes to go big and broad. And my one direction with Shatner is, I told him this, and I said, look, you have to wonder, people have to wonder, the audience has to wonder, are you serious? Or are you just out of your mind crazy? And he was like, oh, I get that. I totally get that. So that's how he played it. That was my big direction. And, sometimes I'd ask him to bring it down a little bit, or sometimes I'd ask him to go bigger. But if you look at his performance, like, you can go look at clips, my redone clips for Free Enterprise on the Burnett Work website. I've got a number of them, so you can kind of watch them in sequence. But you can definitely get a sense of what he was like. He was amazing. He was really, really, really great to work with. Willow says to me, would you go there with a shapeshifter like Doppelganger if he takes on the form of your biggest crush for the entire time? Well, so for those of you who are not watching The Boys this season, spoiler alert, there's a character called Doppelganger that can take the form of whomever you want. Okay, Willow, I couldn't get past the fact that I'm watching a dude, and this is, by the way, when I say this, I'm not talking about somebody who's trans or anything like that. I'm talking about a straight-up shape-shifting dude who would take the form of, say, a beautiful woman. It's not like a trans woman. Like, I could probably, a trans woman, I could definitely sleep with a trans woman even if she didn't have to have the big snip done either. I could see doing that. But I don't know if there's a straight up dude that took the form of a woman that wasn't trans, I could never go there. Because part of the thing that for my own, well, one of the things that turns me on is what another person brings to the party. Like, you want to know, like, if somebody is, say, doing something physical to you to bring you pleasure, you want to know that the act of doing that also brings them pleasure. And part of the thing is being able to satisfy your partner's desires, like to know that your partner, what they like. You can do something to them, no matter what it is. Where you can put your hands or your tongue or whatever to make them feel the way they want to feel that gets them there. And and reciprocity, that's the thing that turns me on the most. Just because somebody looks a certain way, that is not enough to do it. That's not enough. That would not be enough, because it wouldn't be that person. I could not be with Doppelganger if they turned into, I don't know, 1976 Farrah Fawcett Majors, if that was your thing. Logan's Run Farrah Fawcett Majors, because I would know that in that person's mind, it wouldn't be Farrah Fawcett Majors, and it wouldn't. It wouldn't work for me. Wouldn't work for me. And I'll tell you something. I found that interesting. I found it interesting that Homelander, at least for a while, was able to, like, I could never get past the idea that this doppelganger has just taken on whatever form, but it's still that guy. It's still that dude. It couldn't happen. Now, on the other hand, if you think about a shapeshifter like this, I guess my problem is, as a straight dude, I'd have a problem with the dude element of it. But if you had a shapeshifter like Barbara Boucher in the Star Trek episode By Any Other Name, hang on, let me see. Let's see. Okay. Now this is a lot of people. Okay, I don't know if this makes me a hypocrite or not. I mean, maybe it does. But so, like, Kalinda in By Any Other Name, played by Barbara Boucher, she is by all rights, this character is a tentacled alien from the Andromeda Galaxy that has taken on human form, and let's just say, so she's a tentacled alien. She doesn't look like a human being. But to answer her question, like, this is what she looks like in the episode. Well, as long as I knew that even though her natural form might be a tentacled alien from the Andromeda Galaxy, she'd be a woman. You know, and I would hope that if they still believed in some kind of sexual reproduction and they still were turned on, I could definitely go there if I knew the shapeshifter. Maybe she's a tentacled alien in her original form, you know? But if she's going to look like this as a human being, you know, I think I could take one for the team in that case. It's complicated, though. It's definitely a complicated, complicated question. But I like that. I like the way you think, Willow. I mean, man, if I ever got drunk with you, that would be the conversation that we would have at the bar. We would be rolling on the floor. People would look at us like we were out of our minds. Julius Goodwin is here. We haven't seen Julius in a while. He's been disappeared. I apologize for being away for so long, but I have at last returned. Let the trumpets sound. Line the streets, joyous cheering crowds. Line my path with rose petals. Bring forth the best wines and sacrifice at least 20 virgins, if we can find that many. You don't want to sacrifice virgins. You want to deflower them, Julius. If you sacrifice them, then they're going to be gone. You don't want that. Emilio Hansen is here. Hi, Rob. Thanks for being honest in your apology to Greg Smith. I hope S. Mendelsohn does have the stones to discuss Kubrick. Stay real. Actually, you know what? That was not Emil Johansson. That was Fortunato. My thing just jumped. Emil Johansson said, "Are we headed towards a future where movies and other similar elements will become redundant because so many terrible things are happening?" Well, I don't think that, because stories, I mean, movies are, and books, they're a reflection on what's happening anyway. Movies and stories allow us to make sense, and books and literature and music allow us to make sense of what's going on. So, absolutely. I don't think they're going to go anywhere. Fortunato, let me read that again. Hi, Rob. Thanks for being honest in your apology to Greg Smith. I hope S. Mendelsohn, John Mendelsohn actually, does have the stones to discuss Kubrick. Stay real. I hope he does too. I'd like to have him come on. I don't think he would, though. And after what I said to him, I'd be reluctant if I were him to come on too. What's to say I wouldn't go off on another rant? But I wouldn't. Calvin's here. Calvin Bose is here. If all theaters close and don't reopen, will the studios keep movies from ever being seen? No. No. Especially if they're already made. They'll always be seen. You'll always be able to see movies. So don't worry about that. Ross Gecko sends in a super chat and says, how often do you go back and watch Trek episodes and or movies? I've been watching the original series with Elizabeth. We got through those, and we're at the end of the 5th season of Next Generation. I watch Star Trek episodes all the time. I'm always coming back to them. How often do you go back and watch Trek episodes and or movies? What does it mean to you nowadays? Is it a well you return to for stimulation or more a bid for nostalgic feelings? That's a really good question, actually. I think there's a little bit of both, but what I have really liked is the reason that I return to Star Trek again and again is really to examine it from a storytelling standpoint. I mean, I have lots of friends that watch Star Trek over and over again. You know, they like, I like the stories and I like the music and I like all the iconography and I certainly love all the actors and things like that. But I go back to see, I mean, for me, it's the storytelling. It's not really so much nostalgia. I found that the thing about Star Trek, especially the original series, is I would say 3/4 of the episodes are good to great, and only 1/4 are less than that. So I always go back and examine the writing, and I find most of it fascinating. How well the storytelling, how well it's done, or how well it still works even today. And I learn from it. And every time you go back and you watch it again, I've been literally watching it my whole life, but it still holds up. And yeah, so I think that's there's nostalgia too, but I love Star Trek. I think it's so great. The movies, not so much. You know, the movies I don't like nearly as much as the series. I don't like the Next Generation movies. To be honest, I don't like all 4 of them for various reasons. I mean, yeah, First Contact's palatable, but I just think, I mean, I know they went for an action film and all that, but it just, there's stuff I like about First Contact, but there's a lot of it. I just think the Next Generation movies feel cobbled together to me. They don't feel like they were ever, like somebody said, oh, I want to explore this, and they wrote a movie based on it. They always seemed like some kind of a storytelling gangbang. I never felt like the stories. And the classic Star Trek movies, Wrath of Khan, they're hit and miss too. I like Motion Picture and Wrath of Khan, and Voyage Home is fun, but yeah, I just don't think the movies ever lived up to the series. Jeffrey Mao is here and says, Rob, the correct pronunciation of the author of The Three-Body Problem is Liu. Think few, but starting with an L. Liu. So there's a Y sound in there. Liu. Shishing. Oh, last name is Simu Liu, who is playing Shang-Chi. All right. Shishing. Shishing. All right, there you go. Well, thank you for that, Jeffrey. Chinese words is not my strong suit, as you well know. Alexander Wilson saying, the senators sending letters to Netflix is about playing to their base. People see Netflix as a leftist organization. To me, it's a bunch of nonsense, because if they aren't talking about a stimulus package or filling a Supreme Court seat, then miss me, please. I agree with you, Alexander. I mean, I think it's so lame. But, playing to their base, it's like, I really feel that we have so lost our way in terms of, there's never any talk anymore about how are we going to benefit the entire country. What are we going to do to help all Americans? Partisanship, I used to think partisanship, kind of was the surface of all of it, but at the ocean is all about America. The surface is about your different, now it's not that way. Now half of America hates the other half of America. I mean, I almost sometimes feel like, fine, let's just split the country in half and secede. Let's just do it. Like, why? If so many people hate us, it's so funny to me being branded as, oh, you're a Hollywood elite. What does that even mean? Most of the people I know are not elitist at all. They're all self-made people that bust their ass, that are scrappy after, 30 or 40 years in the business. They're still trying to work hard. Yeah, I mean, I don't understand that. I mean, I get where they're coming from. But America is so big, and we're so many different kinds of people, and I just think that, your Netflix. I mean, Netflix is who everybody loves movies and television, everybody, and Netflix is providing. Thinking that they're a leftist organization. My God, the Netflix is making movies and TV bringing it from all over the world. I mean, it's amazing that they're actually a worldwide cultural repository of all different kinds of interesting views and beliefs and all that. And I'm sure it's got a certain bent to it, but it's pretty great in this country that we have some place like that is giving us stuff from all over the world. No one else is. Richard says, I've been a Star Trek fan all my life, but I've never actually sat down and watched the original series. What? I'm a Berman-era fan, so after watching about 10 episodes over the last few weeks or so, I have to say, I get it. I get why this show is so good. And the reason why it's so good to me is the characters. I'm at the end of the second season at the moment, and I have to say, in terms of premises, it's really pushing it. Gangster and Nazi alien societies, Yangs and Combs. But regardless of that, I can't wait to see how Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and even Scotty will react to that. This anticipation makes me fall for the show. Compare that to something like Enterprise. I think some of the premises of Enterprise were really creative. Some of those writers worked overtime, but regardless of what perils the Enterprise crew got into, I found myself really not caring how Archer and T'Pol felt about it. It was similar with Voyager as well. Anyway, hope you're well. Well, Richard, I look, Star Trek, it was pulp sci-fi that had really great characters, and it made the most of its situations. And I totally agree with you. I obviously love the original series. I've loved the original series my whole life. And it was all about the characters, and especially the interplay between Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. They seemed, more so than any other Star Trek, they seemed like real people. Everything else, the characters are more archetypical. There was, and I think that's why I love Deep Space Nine so much, because by the time you get into seasons 4, 5, 6, and 7 of Deep Space Nine, there's so many great characters, whether it's Garrick and the relationships that they have. I mean, all the characters seem so great. Everybody, what's amazing to me is if you go, here, I'll find it. I'll put it in the, let's see, best DS9 scene with Odo and Garrick. There's this, Yeah. So this is from the 4th season opener, The Way of the Warrior, and it's on YouTube, and I'm sure people have watched it before. So it's a great moment. You've got two dudes in all of this crazy prosthetic makeup, and I don't even think, like, if you think about Jakar in Babylon 5, that was some really great full head prosthesis. I think that was better makeup than what you're going to see here, but they had to make it easier to apply. But look at this scene that I just put in the live chat. That's from Deep Space Nine, the 4th season, 2-hour premiere of The Way of the Warrior. I mean, look at those characters, that conversation that they have. It's pretty theatrical, but I love it. These guys in heavy makeup, and you still really enjoy. I mean, maybe people don't, but I really enjoy that. Jason Whitcomb says, Rob, I know you like Star Crash, and that sort of confuses me. I picture you being a man who loves well-made epic films, or small films with verisimilitude. There's none of that in Star Crash. It's like a film made by high school kids that played in theaters. Well, Jason, you're correct. And I've been defending my love of Star Crash for a long time. But I think I love it for that very reason. It looks like the kind of movie my friends and I would have made when we were paying homage to every science fiction and horror movie, whether it's Ray Harryhausen. I mean, there's so much in Star Crash. And you know what I love about it? It's so sincere. And I do think there's a lot of fun stuff in it, but it's like watching a local theater production of something. It's like watching a fan film, but there's such love and sincerity and joy in it, even though it's a complete, utter fabricated ripoff of 20 different things. I do love it so. But that's the thing. I love it for that reason. I don't think it's a particularly very good movie, but I certainly love I feel such joy watching it. To me, it's like the ultimate. If I went out and made a feature film with all my toys, it would be something like and have one of the hottest women who've ever graced the screen, and Marjo Gortner and David Hasselhoff and Joe Spinell and Christopher Plummer with a John Barry score. You know what it was? Star Crash is the movie that I imagined making right after I saw Star Wars for the first time when I was 10. Maybe that's why I love it so much. Jason Whitcomb says, Rob, Zack Snyder's Justice League will finally be seen sometime next year on HBO Max. Being a guy who makes supplemental material, I'd love to see you do a documentary on George Miller's almost Justice League film, Justice League Mortal. I think somebody is doing a documentary on Justice League Mortal. I'd love to do that too. I would love to make a documentary on the making of the Snyder Cut. Jason also goes on to say, yesterday someone wrote in a letter RE Star Wars and it's 3 acts. However, we know that originally written and filmed, Star Wars had a totally different opening and the whole Biggs Darklighter arc was edited from the film. That is true. Absolutely. And you can see that in the deleted scenes. But that's what happens in every movie. You know, every movie, look, the fact that it's Star Wars and everyone loves it as much as it does, deleted scenes get more scrutiny. But I guarantee you, every movie has scenes that are cut out. And those scenes in Star Wars just weren't that good. And I think, was it Koo Stark? She was in that movie. She was in Star Wars in Anchorhead. But I think getting rid of all that, you cut all the fat away. If the stuff doesn't work, get it out of there. And I think what you find that in the editorial process, they say a movie's written 3 times. Once on the page, once while you're shooting it, and then its final rewrite is when you edit it. And I believe that. But Star Wars is it is almost like a perfect 3-act structure. And I think that's why, remember, that's what editorial does, is you hone the material down, you shape it down to what is the best 3-act structure. And I think they did a really good job with that, with Star Wars. Raymond Verrata says, Aldous Hodge is cast to play Hawkman. Yes, I didn't talk about this. Aldous Hodge is cast to play Hawkman in DC's Black Adam. He's been a favorite of mine, especially during the Jeff Johns run. What's sad is that some people are calling it race bending. They don't understand that Hawkman is Egyptian and his reincarnation is his thing. First of all, yeah, I mean, first of all, I've always loved Hawkman. You know, I wonder. Speaking about Hawkman, I wonder. Hang on, I've got so much stuff that I have to deal with on my desk here. I guess. I guess I moved things. That used to be here. I had Timothy Truman's Hawkworld. I was looking at Hawkworld on here recently. Yeah, I guess I don't. I thought I did, but I don't. But yeah, like I love Hawkman. Tater Hole, I love Hawkman. All the different incarnations. Race bending, making Hawkman a black dude. I'm fine with that. Like you pointed out, his Egyptian reincarnation, yeah. Plus, he's going to look great in the uniform, especially if he's got just the cross, he's bare chest. He's going to look great. I don't have a problem with that at all because, yeah, you go back to ancient Egypt, it makes total sense. So, I have no problem with that. I think it's great. And put him in the movie. I mean, you know what? Also, if you're going to put a superhero, like, I could see Black Adam in a movie with Hawkman or with Dr. Fate, people that have ancient roots. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. I think it's fine. Stubble McShave says, ooh, Anonymous sends in a tip of $1. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Thank you for sending a tip. Stubble McShave says, if you got to adapt the first two Hyperion books, would you do it as 2 movies or as a TV series? Oh, dude. Personally, I do it as a 2-season TV series. In the first season, I do 6 episodes focusing on a Pilgrim backstory in each episode. By the way, have you any idea who you'd cast in the roles? You know what, Stubble? I have no idea. It's been so long since what Stubble is talking about, since I can grab them. These are 2 of my favorite science fiction books of all time. Let's see. So You're Not Reflecting on the Lights. Hyperion. Dan Simmons' Hyperion. And this is, of course, the first edition hardcover that I did, in fact, have Mr. Simmons sign. And this is Fall of Hyperion, which now... these are 2 of my favorite science fiction books. It's basically, somebody had said of it that it's Chaucer's... I don't know why this one isn't signed. Maybe I haven't met Dan Simmons since then. Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales set in space. It's kind of like that, I guess. But this was written as 1 book. And there are 2 other books. There's Endymion and Rise of Endymion, which I think are different. But the Hyperion books are fantastic. Now, I don't know who I'd cast in the roles, Stubble, because these are 2 of my favorite books of all time. I mean, this is a hugely ambitious project. And look, if they're doing Foundation, somebody's going to do this. Martin Scorsese was going to take a crack at this once, too. And I think he was going to adapt the Endymion books. But I think that it would be really interesting. The Pilgrim backstory, each of them has to be different episodes. I totally agree. But I think I would maybe go in and out of their backstories. I don't know. To be honest, I'd have to go back and read these again. I mean, I'm so fanatical. I have Brodarts, plastic Brodarts on the covers. They're so good, but I don't know. I mean, definitely you'd have to go in and out of the backstories. Kind of like, Watchmen did a little bit about that. You kind of went in and out, like when you found out Hooded Justice's backstory, but this lends itself really well to doing that. But I would probably go back and forth. But yeah, I would make it longer. I'd do a 10 episode series for each season. But that would be the way to do it. Dieter is here from Saarbrücken, Deutschland. Dieter's shiny bastion sends in a tip and says, "Greetings, Rob. I forgot to pay you for your voiceover work for our teaser. 5 versions, $5 it is. I know it's way below studio standards, but I'd have to buy extra Blu-rays from time to time, so I will have to keep the rest of your salary. Sorry." Do you know how much Don LaFontaine in a world used to get? Don LaFontaine, the voiceover artist, he would do 3 readings for you. And I produced commercials he was in, so I know this. He would show up, and you didn't direct him. He would drive around in his limo all day to the various facilities. He'd give you 3 readings for like a commercial, $5,000. He came in and left. He'd give you 3 readings, came in, and would go away. Jason Whitcomb sends in a tip and says, I'd like to raise a glass to Dick Bush. Get your mind out of the gutter, Post-Geek Singularity. Mr. Bush was the cinematographer who shot When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth, Twins of Evil, Dracula AD 1972, Tommy, Victor Victoria, and the underrated The Fan. Not the Tony Scott version, but the 1981 version. Cheers, Dick. Well, you know what? I'll drink to Dick Bush. I like Dick Bush. Malbrained says, I know you're a Wong Kar-wai fan. Blossoms will appear soon. That's what I've been hearing. I'd like to see it. But your thoughts on the recent IndieWire report that there's a Chungking Express sequel greenlit. I love Chungking Express and Fallen Angels. I read that the sequel's going to get made, but he might not direct it. He might only produce it, and it's more like a spiritual sequel, like some of his other films, like what's 2049? Yeah, 2049. And I mean, I'd like to see him direct it, to be honest, you know. And I want to see Blossoms. Where's Blossoms? You know, it takes him a long time. But I think it's great because I love Chungking Express, but it'll be interesting to see, like, how does he do, like, jumping into the future? How does he work? Because Chungking Express is such this great sort of slice of life story. I love it, but I can't wait. Anything that Wong Kar-wai does, I get excited for. Alexander Wilson sends in a tip and says, nobody has to defend Weiss and Benioff. They made one of the most popular shows ever. Their viewership didn't crater like Walking Dead. Game of Thrones is the most pirated show of 2020 and still one of the most streamed shows today. Men lie, women lie, and don't. Jay-Z. I agree. I agree with you, but man, they I don't know, man. Those last 3 episodes. Alexander Wilson says, if Doppelganger turned into Nicole, OG knows who she is, you would probably be down. Man, you're into tentacle monsters. Tells us your other fetishes. No, I mean, you know, that's just, I think because it's more of a Cthulhu thing, you know, the Andromeda. I find it interesting that there's a lot of that in Star Trek, that there are alien creatures that are very, very different looking than human beings, and when they turn and they take human form, that they have relationships of some kind with our characters. And I find that to be interesting. I mean, I think the whole idea of just alien life in general that are shapeshifters that take on human form, you know, is interesting because it you know, we're so appearance-based, especially dudes. You know, we're so appearance-based. But I think I've seen more tentacled monsters, or the idea of tentacled monsters has been such a staple of science fiction for so long. Jeff Yerke, I'm not into tentacle monsters, by the way. I don't think that my love of great monsters would tell you much about my fetishes. I have pretty basic fetishes, to be honest. Jeff Yerke sent in a super chat and says, Rob, I made it through the Roddenberry Vault. What a hoot. It's got me agreeing with Scott that Star Trek was for me about my heroes. Absolutely. Live long and prosper, Jeff. Absolutely, Jeff. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Calvin Bose says, I must correct you. 007 is a number given to Bond in the book For Your Eyes Only. Bond wonders who would get his number if he died. Oh, well, there you go. The the theory is James Bond is a code name, and I don't agree with that. No, look, 007 is a number. There's only so many license to kill, so 007 is given to people, yes, but not the James Bond code name. Commander Bond was in the British Navy, so absolutely. Raygun Media Productions, that would be Jason Spriggs, and that is this poster he did. He's trying to obviously clearly butter me up, but Raygun Media Productions says, locked the location for our shoot for our intergalactic Imagination Connoisseur Film Festival entry the other day. At the risk of being overly optimistic, are we all limited to one entry in the festival? Also, no Trek fan films with no canon characters. That is correct. No fan films from other no fan films. So no Star Trek fan films. All the IP. One of my strictest rules for the film festival is it has to be completely original, and it has to be a universal premiere in its current form. A universal premiere. So yes, and I'm pretty adamant about that. I think that's really important. But look, I mean, I keep hearing that more and more people are going to make movies. I just look at it this way. I think it's going to be fun. You know, I mean, here's going to be something that is completely, I think, hilarious. I'm hoping that we're going to get some really fun, creative movies. And like I told you, we already have a sponsor for the Visual Effects Award who is putting up $500. There's a $500 cash prize, and I'm going to be looking for that more often than not. I'm hoping people will come in and sponsor awards. But again, it's going to be hard to see how this is going to go. I mean, hey, it could crash and burn, Mav, but I don't think it will. I think if nothing else, it's going to be fun. Maybe people will get off their asses and promote and make something, and it'll be fun. And that's what I'd like to inspire is creativity. We got 2 months. You know, Dieter Bastian and Patrick Keller kicked out. They went out and made The Secret Exchange too. So that's pretty cool. And we'll see, you know. And again, these movies, I know that one of the movies I'm getting is 2 minutes long. And that's fine. It can be 2 minutes. It can be 10 minutes. Hell, it can be an hour. Just make it good. Make it fun. You're competing against all different kinds of people. So I think that's fantastic. So Raygun Media Productions, I look forward to seeing what you do. But yes, no fan films. It's got to be an original IP, original concept. Richard says, following my earlier notion, why do you think no one from Berman or Kurtzman era ever tried to replicate the TOS character dynamic? I mean, I remember being in agony during Enterprise how boring all the crew was, and we've covered Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard enough. Thoughts? You know what? I think it's just really hard to write those kinds of characters. I think the real hard part is when you're creating characters from whole cloth, like Star Trek characters, what was so great about the original series was they weren't writing characters in a science fiction show. They were writing great characters first that just happened to be in a science fiction show, but part of it is that it was allegorical. So the Balance of Terror, Run Silent, Run Deep, you know, it was a submarine show. So when you have the conversation between Dr. McCoy and Kirk, when he's talking about responsibility, the writers for that show realized it could, as long as it was about real human emotions, and they had all the archetypes that they were working with of other things like Westerns and military, and they were all in, a lot of the people that wrote those things were in the military, so they wrote characters that they knew. They wrote real people. As opposed to by the time you get to Enterprise, all they were writing was Star Trek archetypes, and there wasn't enough reality in those characters. They were like writing these, and you had Brandon Braga and Rick Berman that weren't exactly known. I mean, Brandon Braga started as a Writers Guild intern in Star Trek. And so by the time you get to Enterprise, I think one of the problems with that show is you're only writing Star Trek characters, as opposed to, you should always be only writing characters themselves and then put them in a Star Trek show. Don't write Star Trek characters. In Star Trek, the original series, they were just writing great characters. Even in the Next Generation, they were trying to replicate. They're like, okay, we have to have this on the crew, this on the crew. And I think that's always the biggest problem with Star Trek is modern, since the original series, forget that you've got to write characters that are not in a Star Trek show. Although I think in the case of Discovery, they've done that. They wrote the characters and then they forgot to put those characters in a Star Trek show. I mean, none of the characters in Star Trek Discovery act like that they went through Starfleet Academy. To me, they don't act like they're real people at all. They don't act like, I don't believe any of the characters they've shown us. And Anson Mount, part of the reason you believe Anson Mount was his delivery. You know, he sounded sincere, and I think that was one of the great things about his character. But anyway, this brings me to the end of Robservations, episode number 522. I want to thank everybody who supports the channel. Thank you for super chats and tipping. I especially love people who write me letters. Send me letters at theburnettwork.net. You have 4 more days to submit posters. I mean, as you saw, we got this one today from Ninja. That one came in. And then, of course, we got Jason Spriggs' poster here. Look at that. I mean, there's some great artwork going on. You can contribute. You can send it into the poster competition. You got until the 30th of September. Then we will vote. I'll probably leave it up for 5 days. And on October 5th, I will have an answer for everyone. And actually, you'll provide the answer. So thank you for that. I want to thank my moderating staff, Robert Priso, Joshua Levesque, Mr. Derringer. Haynock is here. I think I saw Greg Smith earlier. And I appreciate, Greg, you writing me that letter. So thank you very much. And you can always go find the Richard on the Post Geek Singularity Facebook page. And yes, indeed, remember, we are barreling headlong to August 1st and the launching of a festival that was actually made up on the show, but it's now a real thing, the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. And it's open to everybody. It's also the very first film festival in history that is open to extraterrestrial entries. So we will waive the $25 entry fee if you are or can prove your extraterrestrial origin and that the film you send to us is in fact of extraterrestrial origin. I really look forward to getting any extraterrestrial entries into the festival. I think that would be quite exciting, and it would certainly bring a lot of publicity to the channel. But hey, one never knows. You just never know. Isn't that the start of a movie? Some yo-yo YouTuber has an idea to have an intergalactic film festival, and then one day a strange package arrives, and lo and behold, who knows? You never know. Maybe Vega will send down a signal and Jodie Foster will find it. Who knows? Let's see. But yes, so join in. Now remember, everyone, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. I will be back tonight. Tonight, whining about movies. We are doing Romantic Saturday. It was Romantic Friday. Now we're doing Romantic Saturday. You're going to see us in 3.5 hours, and we are going to talk about When Harry Met Sally. It had to be you. Is there something wrong with my face? So join us for that. Every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, I bid you all a fine day. Have a better day, or join us. Join us. Join us tonight for Romantic Friday. That has become Romantic Saturday for Rob Reiner's When Harry Met Sally. And with that, I say good day to you. Have a better day.